Good evening, everybody. Hi, I'm John McEwen. I'm the Executive Director of the New Jersey Theater Alliance, and I thank you so much for being with us tonight, which I know is going to be a very interesting, informative, and engaging discussion. We want to thank all of our friends here at the Lewis Center for the Arts for their wonderful support in hosting us tonight. And we do have Michael Caden, the chair of the Lewis Center, who would like to give you some welcoming remarks. Michael?
Thanks, John. So yes, on behalf of the Lewis Center for the Arts, I welcome you to the Lewis Arts Complex. Right, this is a building that was opened in 2017, as you probably know, and it houses some of the programs of the Lewis Center for the Arts, which include the program in theater, headed by Jane Cox, who's here with us tonight, wonderful lighting designer. The program in dance, headed by choreographer Susan Marshall. The program in music theater, headed by performance historian Stacy Wolf. The program in visual arts, headed by sculptor Martha Friedman. And the program in creative writing, headed by the Poet Laureate of the United States, Tracy K. Smith. Those are all women's names, right? I am in my 8th year as chair of the Lewis Center, and next year Tracy K. Smith will become the next chair of the Lewis Center for the Arts, I'm happy to say. I sort of use this incantation of names partly as an introduction to tonight's subject. As a performance historian myself, I know full well that the American Regional Theater, the American Resident Theater, was the invention of women. Women in the 1940s and 50s who wanted to make work for themselves, right? And so Margot Jones went to Dallas, right? And Nina Vance went to the Alley Theater in Houston, right? And Zelda Finchandler went to the Arena Stage in Washington. And they are very much our foremothers, the foremothers of these wonderful women who are gathered here today. And I'm delighted, again, that to be hosting this very important and timely event. I'm sure that many of you will have seen in last year's New York Times, exactly 1 week ago, the article, "Doors Open for Women and People of Color at Top Ranks of American Theater." Right, and I was delighted that the new artistic director at the center stage ended the article. It was her quotation, the end of the article by saying, "When I'm at the end of whatever time I have here, all I want behind me is a trail of open doors and shattered glass." So, right on, as we used to say back in the day. So welcome and have a great time.
Thank you, Michael. For those of you that don't know, the New Jersey Theater Alliance is a service organization for the state's 34 professional equity companies. Our theaters go from Cape May up into Bergen County. There's something really there for everyone. And I'm so happy that our 4 distinguished panelists are here tonight who all do such incredible work. If you haven't been to McCarter, the Shakespeare Theater of New Jersey, Passage Theater, or Luna Stage, really you owe it to yourself to see the incredible work that these 4 women are responsible for. So thank you all for being with us tonight. This program is part of the Stages Festival, so every March the Theater Alliance produces 70 or more events around our state. Most of them are free of charge. We bring theater not only into the theater, but we also bring them to non-traditional venues such as independent living centers and churches and libraries, because we believe that every individual needs to have access to quality theater, and they need to be introduced to the incredible work that our 34 professional theaters provide to us each year. So this is our 22nd year of the Stages Festival, and we're delighted. This is actually the last week of that festival, and so delighted that this panel discussion is a part of that. I can't go without saying that the Stages Festival would not be possible without the support of Bank of America, the New Jersey State Council on the Arts, Horizon Foundation for New Jersey, Ocean First and Mid-Atlantic Arts Foundation for their incredible support that allow us to bring these performances all across the state during the month of March. So please, a round of applause for those supporters. We also are grateful for one of our dearest supporters that have been with the New Jersey Theater Alliance since our inception 37 years ago, and that's the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation. And I'm so happy to see Marissa Benson with us, and Shardina Johnson, and Wendy Lisco from the Dodge Foundation. Thank you so much for all you do and for being here. And we have an incredible board of trustees. In fact, we had a board meeting this morning, and it's led by the incredible Larry Capo, who's our president. Larry, thank you so much for being here. And a very big shout out to Loris Gray Hawk, who is our digital communications and marketing manager, for her incredible work in putting tonight's event together. And Deontay Griffin-Quick, who is our marketing assistant, for all of his support as well. We're very happy to continue our partnership with the New Jersey Historical Commission. We've been working with them on a variety of projects over the years. In fact, we had a panel discussion last year at this time. It was a little, Mother Nature was a little bit different back then. I think we had an ice storm, but we, theater people, we just keep going. But I really want to thank the New Jersey Historical Commission for all of their friendship and all of their support. And I'm delighted that Sarah Curitan is here, the executive director, who would like to say a few words. Sarah?
Thank you so much, John. And I just want to tell you that we're delighted once again to co-sponsor an event at the Stages Festival with the Theater Alliance. And I'm a firm believer that the arts and humanities are just branches of the same tree. So, and whenever we find opportunities to collaborate, I am excited to take advantage of those. And one of the things we've done is, over the years, the Historical Commission establishes themes for each year. And we look for themes in New Jersey history that are perhaps underexplored, underappreciated, themes that we can really raise awareness statewide about. And so our theme for this year is New Jersey women. And so obviously tonight's panel is a perfect contribution to that theme. We're doing that because of a very big anniversary that occurs in 2020, and that is the centennial of the passage of the 19th Amendment. And so I do want to encourage you to be looking for events that will be taking place all around the state. This is one of them, and it's going to keep going all the way through 2020, which, by the way, just happens to be a pretty big election year. So how appropriate that we mark the centennial of the passage of the 19th Amendment in a year in which we will also all turn out to vote in a very important election. Now, New Jersey, of course, you'll not be at all surprised to hear me say, has been home to some pretty extraordinary women. Whether it's Annis Boudinot Stockton, the poet, who was wife of one of our signers of the Declaration of Independence, lived right here in Princeton. Whether it's Elizabeth White, who was the cultivator of the first domesticated blueberry down in Hamilton, New Jersey. That's why there's a blueberry festival there every year in June. Whether it's great artists like Whitney Houston or Anne Hathaway or Meryl Streep. But there's one other woman that I want to end by remembering, and that is Alice Paul. Alice Paul, of course, was the great crusader for the 19th Amendment. She was also co-author of the Equal Rights Amendment, fought until her dying day for the passage of the Equal Rights Amendment. And she was also a native of Mount Laurel, New Jersey. Her home is there. It is a National Historic Landmark. A wonderful organization, the Alice Paul Institute, cares for it and also runs a Girls Leadership Institute there. So if you haven't been to Paulsdale, I encourage you to go visit. And I want to leave you with maybe one of the best known quotes from Alice Paul. I never doubted that equal rights was the right direction. Most reforms, most problems are complicated. But to me, there is nothing complicated about ordinary equality. So enjoy tonight's panel.
Thank you, Sarah. So I'm so delighted that Paula Ellickson has returned as our moderator, who moderated our panel last year. And I've seen Paula moderate many discussions at McCarter Theatre, and you are a pro. Moderating is not an easy task. And I believe that we have one of the best, the care that Paula takes. And as McCarter Center's artistic engagement manager, she oversees all of those, the talkbacks and all of the community outreach initiatives, the artist discussions, and so much more at McCarter. And we're so happy that she's agreed to join us again tonight. So without further ado, Paula Ellickson.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks to John and Sarah and the New Jersey Theater Alliance and the Historical Commission for conceiving of this event, especially given the commemoration of women's suffrage and the recognition and celebration of the contributions of New Jersey women. I'm honored by this opportunity to moderate tonight's panel. Thank you, Ari and Ryan and Bonnie and Emily, women of New Jersey now, for joining us all here tonight to share the stories of your lives in theater art and your work in artistic leadership. And thank you, wonderful assembly of theater enthusiasts, for joining us and choosing to be here tonight with us at Princeton University's Lewis Arts Complex. And I can't thank you enough, Michael, for really positioning this event and our panelists in theater history, in New Jersey history. I really appreciate that. That was something that I couldn't figure out how to get it in, and I didn't need to because you were here, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Lewis Center, for housing us. Thank you, HowlRound, for live streaming us. And greetings to the HowlRound Theater Commons attendees online or in our archive for joining us as well. I appreciate you. So starting with thanks, I will continue with acknowledgements, as in recognition of the truth of things. I would like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Lenape people. I would also like to acknowledge and foreground our conversation with a recognition of the obvious. This is an event featuring 4 panelists and a moderator who are all white women. And I share with you the following statistics. There are 34 member theaters in the New Jersey Theater Alliance. 10 of those theaters are helmed by artistic directors who are women. None of those 10 female artistic directors are women of color. And there is one New Jersey Theater Alliance member theater with an artistic director of color who happens to join us today, and I'm so honored to have him here. I will be asking the panelists to share their thoughts on leadership initiatives for a diverse, equitable, and inclusive American theater from their perspective of power and privilege in the course of tonight's conversation. Let me express my gratitude in advance for your 4 unique perspectives and contributions to tonight's panel and to theater, while I also ask the audience to consider the perspectives not being voiced and heard tonight. And now for format. I prepared some questions for our panelists. Those of you who have attended panels or post-show discussions know I've prepared more than is necessary. And these questions are intended to touch on aspects of their artistic journeys, from their beginnings in professional theater to their subsequent taking on of their respective executive leaderships, following with attention to the themes of challenges, choices, and changes. I will engage them with my questions for about 45 minutes. I've strongly encouraged you. I was going to strongly encourage you in the green room, but you were so busy talking that I didn't want to interrupt you. But you should feel free to do as you did in the green room, to ask one another questions and with the follow-up questions. That will make the best conversation for our fabulous audience. At about 45 minutes or so, we'll turn the discussion over to you, to your questions and your comments. And now for introductions. It's my great honor to introduce the panelists, and I'm going to do it in terms of geographical proximity from the farthermost to the closest. And I've also asked each artistic director, if you read my notes, to please, once I introduce you, if you would just introduce your theaters and share information for anyone that may not know of your theaters, the work that you're doing. We're going to start with you, Ari. Ari Laura Kreith became the artistic director of Luna Stage in West Orange in February 2018 and is in the midst of her first full season of leadership. Luna, which was founded in 1992 in the city of Montclair, became a professional theater in 1995 and moved to its current location. Prior to Luna, Ari founded and became artistic director of Theater 167 in Jackson Heights, New York City, which is the world's most diverse neighborhood where 167 languages are spoken. Under her leadership, Theater 167 was awarded the 2015 New York Innovative Theater Foundation Cafe Chino Fellowship, presented annually to a theater company that consistently produces outstanding work. In 2016, Ari received the League of Professional Theater Women's Lucille Lortel Award in recognition of her work as a director and the body of work created under her leadership at Theater 167. Ari received her bachelor's from Yale University and her MFA from University of California at Davis. Ari Laura Kreith, welcome.
And just to briefly introduce Luna Stage, Luna is the smallest theater represented here. We're a 99-seat, very flexible black box space, and one of our biggest adventures is inviting people into an experience that feels malleable and transformative every time. We are about to launch a second space, which is a 60-seat space, so it's even smaller, to do more intimate projects in the coming year. I think one of the really exciting things that we have embarked on in the past year is really moving outside of the borders of our building and creating work in our community. I think one of the things I love about being at Luna is that we're at the intersection of many different communities and cultures, and so a huge part of our mission is inviting all of the communities that share our space into dialogue with one another and attempting to represent the diversity of perspectives of the communities that we serve.
Thank you, Ari. Now, the Shakespeare Theater of New Jersey, founded in 1963 in Madison as the New Jersey Shakespeare Festival, has been creating theater art and entertaining audiences for 56 years. Bonnie J. Monte has been at its artistic helm for half of the Shakespeare Theater's existence, having assumed the position of artistic director in 1990. In the course of 28 seasons, about to start 29, she has directed over 65 productions and evolved the theater into one of the most respected classical theaters in the country, gaining recognition for her successful revitalization of the institution and its development as one of America's leading training grounds for emerging classical theater artists. Before her appointment to the Shakespeare Theater, she was a casting director for Manhattan Theater Club, and prior to that, for 8 years, was associate artistic director at the Williamstown Theater Festival in Western Massachusetts. She received her undergraduate degree from Bethany College in West Virginia and a conservatory degree in directing from the Hartman Theater Conservatory. She holds honorary Doctor of Humane Letters degrees from Drew University and the College of St. Elizabeth, and was named one of the 25 most influential people in the arts in New Jersey by the Star Ledger. Bonnie Monte, thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Well, the Shakespeare Theater of New Jersey does a lot of Shakespeare. It's pretty self-explanatory. But I think what a lot of people don't know is that we are devoted to the entire classic canon. And so you can see everything from the Greeks to Shakespeare to Moliere and to what we consider the modern classic writers, Pinter, Williams, O'Neill, Miller, and we're stretching that envelope a little bit further and further. We did our very first Sam Shepard last year, which is not a big deal for most companies, but for a classic theater company, we felt that certainly his work had entered into what we think the American classic canon. But at the same time that we have two stages. We have a beautiful kind of intimate main stage space on the campus of Drew University, and in the summers we have a 1,000-seat Greek stone and grass amphitheater that we are very privileged to use at the College of St. Elizabeth, and we do one big outdoor stage production each summer as well. But half of our mission is devoted to education, and so we have, I believe at this point, 12 or 13 major education programs that serve students, educators, the general public, and then a lot of focus on training for emerging professionals. And that keeps us busy pretty much on a year-round basis.
Thank you, Bonnie. You may applaud that. Please do. Thank you. Don't hold back. That goes for everybody. In the fall of 2017, Ryanne Domingues became artistic director of Passage Theater Company in Trenton, which was founded in 1985. Prior to her appointment at Passage, Ryanne was immersed for 6 years in the Philadelphia theater scene, working with the Wilma Theater, Interact Theater Company, and Plays and Players Theater, and serving as producing artistic director of Simpatico Theater, which she co-founded with 4 other theater makers. Ryanne received her undergraduate degree from Bloomsburg University of Pennsylvania and earned her MFA in directing from the University of California at Irvine. While on the West Coast, she had the opportunity to work for South Coast Repertory Theater, California Shakespeare Theater, and Utah Shakespeare Theater. Following the completion of her graduate work, she returned to the East Coast, Philadelphia, and the Wilma Theater in the capacity of External Relations Director, which we were talking about in the back room. She spent 2 seasons engaged in development, fundraising, and donor relations, which was prepping her for her current role at Passage Theater. Ryanne, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello. Hello. So Passage Theater is in Trenton, New Jersey. We do our productions at the 100-seat Mill Hill Playhouse, which is owned by the city of Trenton. We produce socially relevant new plays and arts programming that resonates with our community. And part of what we do is we try to partner and provide community dialogues with other nonprofits whose missions link to our productions. We also have an education program going out to local schools to teach storytelling, and are always open to new works and collaboration.
Thank you. Emily Mann became the artistic director of McCarter Theatre in 1990, and eventually, officially, its resident playwright. In 28 seasons, she has directed nearly 50 main stage productions and written or adapted 10, I would say more than 10 plus plays, 14, who's counting, which were mounted on McCarter stages. While in her artistic leadership position at McCarter, she also directed for Broadway and off-Broadway. During her tenure, McCarter was awarded the Tony Award for Outstanding Regional Theater, and she has been nominated twice herself for Tonys for playwriting and direction. Her other personal awards include a Peabody Award, the Hull Warner Award from the Dramatists Guild, the Helen Merrill Award, awards from the NAACP, 8 Obie Awards, a Guggenheim Fellowship, the 2011 Person of the Year Award from the National Theater Conference, as well as, and perhaps most significant for the introduction given by Michael today, the 215 Margot Jones Award given to a, quote, citizen of the theater who has demonstrated a lifetime commitment to the encouragement of the living theater everywhere. Emily received her bachelor's degree in English literature from Harvard as a Radcliffe student, an MFA in directing from the University of Minnesota, and holds honorary doctorate of arts degree from Princeton University. And I hate saying this, but yeah, the 2019-2020 season
It's my last.
is her legacy season and final season as artistic director at McCarter Theatre, but what a season it's going to be. It will be brilliant. Emily Mann.
Thanks.
I've got to try
I love Paula. Is not only a great moderator and is just one of my inspirations every day at the theater. So, oh boy, yeah. So, McCarter, as many of you know, is right across the street. So we are the closest geographically in this group of 4 extraordinary women leaders. We have an 1,100-seat house, which is very challenging, and we have a 330-seat house, the Roger Berlind, which we share with Princeton University and the students here. We also have a rehearsal room that we sometimes turn into a performance space, and that can be from 60 to 90 people. Sometimes we've gotten it up to 120. Some of you may know the play Eclipsed by Denai Guerrero, which we commissioned and premiered in that space. And it was pretty awesome to be in a room that close. When I hear about what Luna Stage and Passage do with their tiny spaces, oh, do I miss doing work in the room. Yeah, it's exciting. We are a theater dedicated to new work. Maybe because I am a playwright, I care deeply about how we commission, nurture, and birth into the national repertoire plays new work. And we are dedicated particularly for the work by and about women and people of color, and take that mandate extremely seriously throughout the organization, not only in terms of how we commission new work, but also how we do classic work, and we like classic work to be in conversation with the new work. We also, like the other theaters represented here, have an extremely important education and engagement program, which is really part of Paula's genius. We work with our communities, and we believe in the healing power of the theater. We have seen over my 29 years, and I'm sure everyone at this table has seen it in some degree with all of their work, that when you bring theater, not just have people come, young people come to matinees, which is what people often think an education program is, but when you really go to the people and bring the healing power of theater to people, so that they're not only observing it, but sometimes they themselves are creating it, whether it is a person in a wheelchair at a senior citizen's home and suddenly they're chair dancing and they feel alive and liberated for the first time in many years, or whether it's a young person finding their voice and writing their plays, or knowing that they too can perform, we see that we can transform lives. And so we have put education and engagement with the community into the core of our artistic planning. And that's basically what we're about. I'm very happy and feel very privileged to so far have had close to 29 seasons, and I'm looking forward to my final season, where I hope to also help transition whoever she may be who takes the reins.
Into the universe. I thought we could begin with your theater director origin stories. When and how that spark of recognition of directing came to you as something that you wanted to pursue professionally. And I do share this wonderful short interview quote from Bonnie that I found online. The interviewer said, "How did you get started in theater?" And Bonnie's response was, I didn't get started. I think I was born doing it. I was a kid who got every kid in the neighborhood together and made, and I use the word made, them do productions." A born director. Bonnie, when did it become clear to you that you wanted to pursue directing? And could you talk a bit about your experience breaking in or establishing yourself in the business?
I thought a lot about that, whether there was a moment when we talked on the phone and when I got your notes, Paula, and I actually think there was, because it is it's something that's quite vivid in my memory. I was the kid who made everybody do plays. But like most young people, I was fluctuating. I'm going to be a ballerina. I'm going to be a novelist. I'm going to be a film director. And I became really obsessed with the idea of becoming a film director, and told my parents that I was going to go to college in Los Angeles. And they said, "No, you are not." And for many reasons. I was actually a very, very shy kid, and I think my parents were quite worried about me going off to Hollywood land and being swallowed alive. But I ended up going to a small college in West Virginia, a beautiful little place, where actually I ended up got to direct Franny McDormand in her first college production. We had a very good couple of 4 years when I was there. And I was very upset to not be in Los Angeles, and I was very upset as a freshman to be not studying to be a film director, which is what I really wanted to do. And so I took Directing 101 in the theater department because that was the only thing even remotely close. And on the very first day of that Directing 101 in my freshman year, we were asked to tell a story we were given a piece of chalk and a blackboard, and we were told to tell a story by simply drawing something abstract on the blackboard. And out of me, I didn't even think about it. I got up and I drew this, and you only had a certain amount of time, and I drew a very simple, strange thing. It was just a doodle, basically. And it was the only one that the class understood in terms of a piece of storytelling. And I was ecstatic, because I had managed to tell a story very simply and very concisely in a very quick amount of time. And everybody was so amazed, and I thought, but I didn't even really think about it. It just came out of me. And it was such a feeling of joy. And I remember thinking, well, why would I want to do film when I can be with people in the room and make them feel this way? And that's when I literally, in that moment, dropped all ambition of being a film director and decided I wanted to be a stage director. Now, I didn't know that much about it at the time, but that is what I pursued fairly relentlessly from that point on. And I knew by the time, I was 17 when that happened, and I knew by the time I was 18, because I remember telling my best friend this, I will have a theater by the time I'm 40. If not, I shall become a doctor. And so I was quite ahead of schedule, and got my own theater when I was 34, so I felt pretty good about it. Yeah, 6 years ahead of schedule. Yeah. So that's kind of what I knew.
Emily, did you have a eureka moment for directing?
Oh, a eureka moment. Well, yeah, it's sort of twofold. I did not make all the kids in the neighborhood put on plays, quite frankly. I did not discover theater until we left our small town in Massachusetts and went to Chicago. And I got a crush on a boy, and he was in the theater department. He was in a play. And I was told if you go and work on the play, you can go to the cast party. So that's what I thought I would do. Interestingly enough, his name is Michael Rosenberg, and he now sells used cars in Seattle. But our new managing director's name, Mike Rosenberg. So it's kind of an interesting circle, come full circle. But I had this total crush on him. I discovered watching him act and watching everyone else do everything else that it was pretty interesting, and I got rather hooked on the theater, and the crush kind of dissolved for him, and I kept going. And it was my junior year in high school, where by that time I was acting and doing props and makeup and sort of anything anyone wanted to do, plus sweep the stage, plus help with the parties, that the teacher said, I think you should try directing. And at first I thought, wait a minute, isn't that what the teacher and grown-ups do? What does that mean? What is directing, really? And he said, try it. So I'd loved visual arts, I loved literature, I loved psychology. I thought I'd be a novelist or a shrink or an English professor. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I put 3 people in a room. I can't believe the play I chose. It was No Exit by Sartre, right? And but I got my French teacher to play the guy, and 2 of my best girlfriends who were also actresses to play the other women. And somehow, once I started working with them, everything came together. I don't know, it it all gelled. I mean, all, you know, psychology, analyzing a text, visual stuff, and I was a musician, and I scored it, and so it all made sense, and it seemed, like you said, sort of effortless. It was like, oh, well, I somehow know how to do this. That followed me into college, and I never thought you could make a living as a professional until I noticed that at senior year, though I was sort of running the theater, the student theater part of it at school, our drama society, and directing all the time, and writing and acting and all that, when they were trying to decide whether they were going to go off to graduate school in film or in theater, were they going to go to Yale or were they going to go to AFI, those were the two sort of ideas in that category. I went to my advisor and said, well, I'm trying to decide whether I should direct movies or direct theater. And he said, oh, my dear, I should have told you earlier, women cannot direct professionally in the United States. You really should think about children's theater. Now this is, I mean, this was 1974. Just to put it into perspective, we've come a long way. The League of Professional Theater Women had their award ceremony last night, and I happened to be there, and boy, have we come a long way. We have so far to go, but I was told, forget it. And I'm very lucky in that I had feminist parents who told me basically I could do whatever I wanted to do if I was good enough. So by the time they told me I couldn't, it was too late. So.
Ari?
Well, I was thinking about my directing origin story, and I realized that I very specifically remember the moment that I fell in love with the theater. Because I was 6 years old, and there was this barn, and people kept going in and seeming really excited about whatever this thing was that they were doing, and I had no idea how to get inside of the barn. So I decided that if I picked up the cigarette butts in the driveway and gave them to the person at the door, maybe they would let me in. And then I was in this magical place, and they were doing Midsummer Night's Dream, and they decided they needed a ferry, and they took a T-shirt and some dry cleaner bags and stapled the dry cleaner bags to the T-shirt, and then light, and then there was this magic thing that happened. And then it was just a part of my life, but it never occurred to me that it was something that you could do as an adult, as a thing that you did. But I also grew up in 27 different countries. And so a big part of my childhood was really dropping in and out of other cultures, and then kind of coming back to the US and trying to sort of explain the experiences that I had had. And so I thought I wanted to be a diplomat. That was actually what I went to college to do. And in my freshman year, I was studying Chinese, I was on this path, and I realized that the thing that I thought I was doing was not actually, the thing that I was setting out to do was not actually this whole kind of idea that I had of helping people understand each other's stories. And that this thing that I had always done was actually that space. So I was at Yale, and I clawed my way into the theater program as an actor, and I fought really hard to be there. And then for my senior project, Yale had a sort of, the drama department has kind of a wall around it. We were very insular. And so I decided I was going to create a piece with actors in the drama department and actors who were not in the drama department, or just people at the college, and then people in the community as well. And so I spent the year building this piece, not thinking that I was a director, but just kind of thinking that I was a theater maker. And kind of devised this project, and it was then boycotted by the theater department, so that I actually had trouble getting my degree. And so when I graduated, I was given a list, and on this, the day before I graduated, by my advisor, and on this list there was Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, you know, there's like wonderful list of people. And he said, what do these people have in common? And thinking about it now, they were all men. I didn't think about that at the moment. But I sort of started talking about how all the things that I admired about these people, and he said they all died for doing what they believed in, so be careful out there. So that was kind of my send-off into doing this thing that I thought I wanted to do. And I will admit that I got scared. And so for a long time, I did not want to be a director. I tried very hard not to. I was an actor, and I was only an actor, and went to grad school as an actor. And my first year of graduate school, I was at a program where we had these British directors who came in, from these wonderful directors who would come in for a quarter and spend time with us, which was great training as a director, but not great training as an actor, actually, because they weren't really invested in our journey. They were getting a chance to do something they dreamed of doing. And so I was watching my classmates not stretch in the ways that I felt they should be stretched. And so I decided that over the summer we should start our own theater company, and I would just happen to direct because somebody needed to do that. And by the second year of graduate school, I came back in and I was sort of like a hyphenate. And I think it's sort of been a gradual process then for me of embracing one side of the hyphen more than the other, but also sort of identifying as a theater maker more than as a director. So that, so maybe I haven't had my aha moment until this very moment right here in front of you all.
Take us home, Ryan.
So I've always been one of those people that I love the art of theater because of the people in it. I'm just going to say that I was introduced to theater. I come from a family of, my father was a welder on the railroad, and my mother was a teacher. So there were no artists in my family. But my mother put me in an after-school theater program because I talked too much in 3rd grade. And then I went on to play an amazing tiger in Free to Be You and Me in 5th grade with no lines, but boy, could I roar. And I kind of, I did some chorus and stuff. But because there were no artists in my family, I was in the school plays in high school, and I told my parents I wanted to major in theater. And they said, great, what's your next plan? What's your plan B there? Because you're going to have one of those. And so I went and I dual majored in theater and secondary English education. I think pushed toward the education, but, I wanted to do both. And so when I went to school, I had to apply for work study, and they put me in the scene shop. So I was the only girl in the scene shop. So I was, building platforms, and then I eventually made it on the roadie crew for all the traveling shows that came in. And I was so happy because there was another girl on that crew. That was amazing. And what happened, eventually I made my way to assistant stage managing at Bloomsburg Theater Ensemble, which is an amazing theater, which was in the same town where I went to college. And so I was acting, but I was building the sets, but I was doing the lights, and then I would stage manage, and it wasn't working. I loved everything, but I didn't think I was really that good at any of it. And so I went into my advisor, Michael Collins. I went into his office and I said, hey, Michael, I think I need to drop the theater major. And he was like, why? And I said, because, I like acting, but I really don't like wearing a costume. And I like stage managing, but I don't think I'm not finding, the thing. And so he used to call me Laratonda. My maiden name's Laratonda. And he shook his head, and he goes, Laratonda, you're a director. And I looked up at him, and I was like, really? And he's like, why don't you assistant direct the next show? And I'm very lucky because the first show I got to assistant direct was a play called Murder and Beauty in Middleton, which I believe was the first play by playwright J.C. Lee, who is a pretty great playwright if you haven't seen any of his work. And then from that point forward, that was it. I happened to be the only director that I went to school with, so Michael mentored me and for years after that, and actually got me pretty much to where I am. So yeah, I kind of got told.
Sorry to group you up in generations, but I'm going to group Bonnie and Emily. I would love for you to talk about the professional and personal factors that led you both to the decision to go to the next level in leadership and apply for the artistic directors positions of the two theaters that you've been at for the last 29 years.
You want to go first?
Can you collaborate on that?
You want me to go first? Either way. You go first. I go first.
All right, well, mine was necessity. I had been a freelance director, playwright, screenwriter. I'd been in Hollywood, I'd been in New York, I'd been on and off Broadway. I had directed around the country and written plays that had been done and successfully done on and off Broadway. And suddenly I was a mom and a single mother, and my son was no longer portable. So I needed to find a place where I could continue to do my work and bring up my child in a way that I thought would give him solidity and a great, strong foundation. And I knew that meant that I either had to teach or I had to run a theater. And I found that the teaching opportunities that I found when I talked to people in those days was very restrictive, that I couldn't leave and direct a play, and also I couldn't leave my son easily to direct a play anyway, or go on a movie set or anything else. So there was a restriction there, but I thought when I started to look at being an artistic director, I felt I can be at home, sleep at home, have dinner with my son every night, and continue my work. So that was the beginning of thinking about being an artistic director. And then I had two dinners. One was with Mark Lamos, who was the first director, the artistic director I worked for when I had a child. And in those days, there were very few women directors. This is in the 80s, early 80s. And no one knew how to set up a situation for a nursing mother. Now, I mean, we have half our staff seems to be have babies right now, right? And we have dressing rooms set up for breast pumping and, all of this. Then it was like, ooh, what do we do? Oh, does she need a crib? This is like, what do we do? And Mark was the first one who gave me, he said, we'll get you a room for your babysitter. We'll get a separate apartment, no charge to you. We'll get a crib in your apartment. We'll have an intern who, helps you organize all of this. It was so moving, and I was able to do it. So I called him and I said, what is it like? Can you stay an artist and be an artistic director? He said, not only that, but it's perfect for you because you love supporting the work of your colleagues. And what you'll do is curate the people you most believe in to come to your theater and give them support. You'll be able to have a place where you build a body of work and a community, and you'll have a place, to have a home. So he was very encouraging. And then I had the great good fortune of having adopted Peter Hall's daughter, who was having terrible times at NYU. Peter had called me and said, will you take care of her? So she was sort of part of my life. And so when he came into New York, she invited me to have dinner with him, and he was then running the National Theatre in England, and he was one of the great, great directors and artistic directors of the world. And I said, you're like an icon, and I shouldn't be asking you for advice about whether to take on a theater or not, but how have you stayed an artist doing what you're doing? He said, okay, number one, you need a great right-hand person who believes utterly in you and your work, not just a managing director, but a producer who's a resident producer. And the other thing is never put on a play for the sake of putting on a play. You only put on the stage something, what is the event? It has to be an event. And those were sort of those two mantras. I thought, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. What makes each production an event, and have someone who's my right arm who can help me execute all of that. And when I found out about McCarter being an opening, I came to interview, and somehow I just had a sense this was the right community. They thought I was the right person. I mean, I thought I'd come for 3 to 5 years, making 5 events a year on the stage, and get my kid through 5 years of elementary school. And here I am 29 years later. So, I mean, it was necessity in order to keep my child sane and happy and keep myself going. I needed to have an artistic home.
I think I wanted to become an artistic director out of necessity as well, but I'll couch it. I didn't have a son or a daughter, but a lot of what Emily said just rang very true for me as well. When I knew that I wanted to direct plays more than anything in the world, and I did start when I was 5, so I kind of knew it for a while. The Golden Goose was my very first play. I still have my script. And as I got older and realized that this is what I loved doing more than anything in the world, and graduated from college, went to a conservatory for directing, and then ended up very luckily assisting a man who became my mentor, a guy named Nikos Sakaropoulos, who was Greek, and I had seen a production of The Seagull that he had directed on PBS's Theater in America, and it was a revelation to me, that production, and I thought, that's Chekhov, now I get it. And I wanted nothing in the world more than to work for this guy, and luckily ended up getting the job. And he taught me how to run a theater for 8 years. And it became very clear to me very early on in that time at Williamstown that if I did not get my own theater, I would not get to do what I wanted to do. There was nobody walking around looking to hire, a innocuous-looking blonde chick to direct huge epic classics, and that's what I wanted to do. I was obsessed with the classics. I loved them. You can't freelance. You can be a freelance director, but you're not going to get to choose what you direct. And very much what you just said, Emily, is correct. I see no reason to direct a piece of theater unless it's something that I have a burning passion to direct. I never wanted to become a utility director, just taking on assignments so that I could live and make a living as a director. There are many plays I don't want to direct or have no interest in. And so it became very clear to me at a fairly young age that if I did not get my own theater, I would not be able to do what I wanted to do personally as an artist, nor would I be able to gather the kind of other fellow artists around me that I wanted to collaborate with. I didn't want to just keep getting stuck in isolated situations where I would have to make do with whatever was handed to me at any particular freelance job that I went to. And so having my own institution that I could provide with my own particular vision and my own leadership and gather like-minded, exemplary, extraordinary artists around me became as much a burning desire as the plays that I wanted to direct. And so they became kind of part and parcel as I entered into my early career years. And there were not a lot of female directors, nor were there hardly any female artistic directors. And so it was often a discouraging journey, but I did have a tremendous set of parents who, like Emily's pretty much told me, you can do anything you want to do as long as you do it well. And I had some really great mentors along the way. Although I have to say, no women, because there weren't any. There were very few people to look to unless you got the chance to go down and work with somebody like Zelda or something like that. But where I was, there were
hire women.
Well, there you go, see? But there were no female artistic directors, to my knowledge, that I was able to get access to. And so you often looked to the men whose work you admired, and if you were lucky enough, you found one who was willing to, encourage a young lady to possibly go into the profession.
You're so lucky you had Nikos and
Yeah.
you had a mentor. Except for that one dinner with Peter Hall, I was only told no.
Wow. I got a little more
And I
than that.
think that's why I'm such a freak about mentoring others now.
Yeah.
Yeah, can
Hop
I
in
just
there.
thank both of you for shoving the doors open for us? Seriously. Thank you.
I have to say, that's very nice to be thanked, but I have to say, I'm not sure that I was even aware, I was certainly not aware of doing that. Yeah, but it was very selfish. I wanted to direct what I wanted to direct, and nobody was going to stop me. Yeah, but thank God it opened some doors. Yes.
Thank you. You did. You did.
I was very aware. Very
Yeah,
aware.
I wasn't.
Yeah.
You two can hop in. I mean, the question that I sort of formulated for you, if it speaks to you, or you can just riff on your own off of what Bonnie and Emily were saying, but you both founded your own theaters and became artistic directors by the founding of theaters. Is that a phenomenon of your generation or just your own individual ingenuity?
I think it's an our generation thing. There were a lot. So part of the reason, so I very similarly had to start a company so that I could work, basically. I was the only director in my class, and my mentor was like, well, if you want to do work, we don't have anything for you, so good luck. And so I was like, I guess I'm producing now, great. So I learned how to do it. But I was very lucky in that about a year out of school, my directing and dramaturgy internship was at Portland Stage Company, which was run and still is run by the artistic director, Anita Stewart, who is a powerhouse. And I didn't have a job after the internship. And so I was like, well, I guess I'm going to go back to doing my own work. Luckily, Portland Stage Company takes 9 interns per year. I asked the rest of the interns if they would like to follow me down to Philadelphia and make a theater company, and 4 of them said yes. I don't know why. None of them had ever been to Philadelphia. They were like, sure, that'll be great. I have nothing else to do. I don't know why they did it, and I'm still grateful for them to this day. But what was amazing that I think was so special is that, you have these 5 kids that were working 60-hour weeks, making, $70 a week as interns at Portland Stage Company. And Anita and the staff there found out we wanted to start a theater company, and they sat us down and taught us how to do it, which was incredible. They would stay after work and have meetings with us to teach us how to do marketing. Anita, I was very lucky that most of the time when I assisted a director, by pure coincidence, I always ended up assisting the artistic director of the company. Like, I got to assist David Ems after grad school. I've assisted a lot of artistic directors, and part of my question was always, how do you do both? But I do think that watching, and when Anita, I assisted her on A Christmas Carol, and she had just had her son James, and that woman walked into the rehearsal room with him on her back and directed half of that show with him on her back, and I went, that's what I want to do. So, and the year after that internship, we all caravaned down to Philadelphia and had a really long talk about why we do theater, and that became our mission statement. So I think it was because the jobs weren't there, but the doors were pushed open, and there were people going, you have to do it yourself, but you can do it. And I think that's the difference, in our generation. I don't know what you're...
I don't know. I don't know that I feel like we necessarily get credit for founding more theater companies. That's true. I mean, I think that some of the theater companies that were founded now seem like institutions, and so it's easy to forget that there were us founding them. I know that for me, I have founded 2 theater companies, and both of them were in moments where I felt like things weren't happening that needed to happen. So the first company actually it started when I was in grad school, and it was this, summer that turned into another summer that then turned into after I graduated, 4 more years of making work in this particular community and with sort of an ever-evolving group of artists who really came out of the graduate program that I was a part of. And at a certain point, I realized that I was either going to kind of evolve into the person who was mentoring and not being challenged beyond a certain place, or I had to kind of take a leap. And one of the actors who I had worked with in California had then gone to Juilliard and came back for a summer, and we worked together. And at the end of that summer, he said, "You need to come to New York." And I put the company on hiatus officially. I was going to go to New York for a couple of years and find some playwrights I loved and go back. So that was the first evolution. The second one, Theater 167, which still really exists, and I'm trying to figure out how to navigate its like continued existence and fuse that with my life at Luna. But I was living in Jackson Heights, Queens, and I was trying to explain to someone in Boulder, Colorado, why I didn't want to move there. And Jackson Heights has so many different cultures sharing community, sharing space, and really flourishing together. And I was trying to figure out how to express that. And so I invited 11 playwrights to co-create a piece. And I didn't really know what it was going to be. And we spent about a year building this project that ended up featuring 28 actors speaking 14 languages. And at the end of that performance, we performed it in a local school, and we tried to kind of eliminate every barrier to access that we could think of. So, we realized the first day that we said the house is open, and people who had never been to the theater before didn't know what the house was, and so we changed the words, and we moved it from the auditorium to the cafeteria because it felt like people were intimidated of walking upstairs to go to the auditorium. So it felt like we had built this way of working that we all kind of took a step back and said, oh, we want to do this some more. And so the company really came out of the piece, and the piece was called 167 Tongues, after the number of languages that were spoken in that community. So Theater 167 really became like, how do we continue to explore these questions of intersection now that we've kind of created a space to do that? So it wasn't really intentional, I suppose. I just felt like I had kind of an obligation to these people who I had brought together. And so we co-created 3 pieces over the course of 3 years, inspired by Jackson Heights, and then kind of had this methodology that we started to bring into other communities. And also, I felt like there were these limitations to these collaborative pieces, that then there were moments where people wanted to go deeper, and so started developing work with the individual playwrights that were sort of exploring those questions, but in a different way. Really morphed in response to the stories being told by its artists, I guess.
Yes, thank you. So at opportunity to have Susie Medek from Berkeley Rep in to visit, and she spoke to the staff at McCarter about the upcoming retirement about the upcoming retirement of their own artistic director. Although Emily was sitting in the room, I kept looking at you the whole time. And she offered a philosophy and advice to us about navigating executive level searches and change in an institution. And she mentioned, and I hope I'm not telling tales out of school, but she mentioned that oftentimes the boards of theaters need to be educated on exactly what an artistic director is and does. So I thought maybe for our edification in the room, could you collaborate very quickly, the 4 of you, on the job description of an artistic director? And just jump in.
In what size theater?
Very good question. Yeah.
Can I just say this, though, before we kind of loop into that?
Please.
I think it's a tough question, only because, like every visual artist has a different style of painting. Every artistic director has a different style of artistic directing. So while so as directors, we have many shared kind of common tasks that we have to deal with as directors. The way that each person runs their theater will dictate very different set of circumstances, because some people are very hands-on, some people are very hands-off, some people want to get involved in certain areas, other people don't want to get in other areas. Everybody has a whole different kind of construct for their own little kingdom. And so while we can throw out all kinds of stuff that we all do, and that we all share, there's probably a bunch of stuff that Emily does that I don't do, or stuff that I do that Emily doesn't do, or Ari doesn't. I mean, so I just think it's important to always
that's great.
to make sure that everybody knows there's very different sets of tasks depending on what kind of theater you run and who you are as an artist.
Gorgeous.
I don't
Yeah,
know if
thank
that
you.
was too
No, that
obvious,
grounds
but-
it all.
Okay.
Yes.
I would say the most important thing, though, that would go across all sizes and kinds of theaters is that the vision of the theater comes from the artistic leader, and everything else comes around that. I would
totally agree.
right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing that we all have in common, and it's vision. And I'm very, very passionate about artists being artistic leaders. There are a lot of theaters that are run by producers or dramaturgs, or I want an artist running it, and I want an artistic vision. And I know some people disagree with me, but I feel very strongly about it. I also think that beyond the vision, each one of us has our own strengths and passions, and you build around that. I mean, very few people are both directors and playwrights. I happen to be one. Kwame Kwei-Armah, who now runs the Young Vic and did run Center Stage in Baltimore, was my buddy because he was another one, and we're very rare. George Wolfe was another one, and he couldn't keep writing and keep running the public theater, so that's why he left the public theater. It's a very hard juggling act, but so McCarter is very much based around new work, also because I am. And your passion is the classic repertoire, and right, and so
I do adaptations of
Right,
classics, and so
yeah.
that is also, I'm functioning as a writer, but it's a little bit different. I'm not creating original material for the most part. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
right.
funny, so just to recognize the woman who was at Passage before me, June Ballinger, who ran the theater for 22 years. Amazing woman and mentor, was a very different artistic director than I am.
she was an actor.
Yeah, she was an actor, and I'm a director. And so, when I got there, there was a shift of, oh, you do that and June didn't, or you don't do that and June did. And it was, I was like, oh, well, we're different people. And it was funny because June and I would meet and have coffee, and we'd kind of laugh about it. But a lot of it is where your artistic heart kind of lands, kind of guides the job in a way.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
But I will say, we're all in charge. I think we all pick the shows and we all read the plays, and I think I think we all wear a lot of hats.
I think that most people don't understand that artistic directors, in addition to doing the more, I'm going to use this word, glamorous parts of the job, meaning we supply vision and we pick plays and we read plays and we direct plays and we write plays, but what I think is the most frustrating thing, and I will not speak for everybody, but I bet I am speaking for everybody, is that we have to spend an inordinate amount of time doing things like fundraising and wooing and courting donors, making sure that our institutions are being run in the right way. And then there's a huge part of our job that is spent in sustaining and keeping our theaters alive just by virtue of keeping them funded. And that is a huge part of our job. And that's everything from writing artistic director statements for NEA grants to going and having dinner with donors and all kinds of stuff. That's a vast variety of obligations and responsibilities all on its own. But I would also assume that we are also spending a lot of time teaching and mentoring, both through certain programs that our theaters offer, but also just on a day-to-day basis with our young assistants and our staff and our young artists and our young designers, our young directors, all the people that we're bringing up through the ranks and helping get them out into the world. And I think I will make this statement. I think women artistic directors tend to do that a lot more. Is this a sexist statement? Probably. I think that women artistic directors tend to do that kind of mentoring a lot more than male artistic directors do.
Correct.
I think there's I think there's certainly that awareness of sort of who's in the room. Yeah. And that we're responsible for deciding who's in the room, whether it's, who directs the play, whether it's, and I realize that in a smaller theater, it may be sort of more granular, that like literally comes down to like who's in the box office, but kind of building that sense of what is your community and what are the rules and values and how do we treat each other inside the community and how does that ripple out into the ways that we interact with the larger community. And I think trying to build a little world that then can serve the larger world.
I think that's true no matter how large your institution
I don't
is.
think it has anything to do with size ultimately.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in every corner also.
I wonder if there, and this, the rest of my questions are just about free-for-alls, right? So you don't have to, we're not going to go through answers from everyone, but whoever has the strongest feeling, if there's a feeling, right? I wonder if there are any strategies or practices that you've had to employ that perhaps a man in the profession wouldn't even have to concern himself with. Next.
I guess I can. Okay, sure. Why not? I was told at one point during my career that to make sure that I never wear a skirt to rehearsal, because I will lose the respect of the status, the respect of everybody in the rehearsal room, and they'll start looking at me like a girl. And I was like, oh, okay, it's a good thing I always wear jeans and a t-shirt anyway, but that's out of laziness. But yeah, I was definitely told that there's a way you should dress when you go to rehearsal to make sure that everybody sees you as an authority figure.
Were you told by a woman or a man?
A woman.
Get out. Really? Wow.
Oh, yeah. I've been told by both.
I just flunked that one. Wow. I just flunked that one.
Oh, yeah.
I feel very aware of the niceness pitfall. And it's just...
Niceness?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Oh, good. Talk about that. Yes.
Therapy.
Therapy.
Well, I feel like I come into a room and people assume that and because I am a soft-spoken and warm and nurturing person, that somehow I will not have strong opinions. And certainly this is not an across-the-board assumption, but it is something that I have tumbled into time and time again in my life, and now I can sort of see it coming and figure out how to navigate it. But I feel like it's very much a piece of being a woman, being responsible for a vision, and noticing that there are those times where there are the people who are going to want, who are going to be uncomfortable with those two things with those two things going together, and that if I didn't come into the room seeming tough, that somehow I'm supposed to be malleable.
In a related question, how many of you have faced gender-based challenges to your authority in the course of either your directing work or your artistic directing work? Can you speak about them?
Sure. I think it's constant. I really do. I think that, it's so difficult to talk about in some ways. I think that part of the reason that I love working in the theater so much is that the community of theater artists have gotten way past that, and got way past it earlier, I think, than most subcultures. And that's not everybody, obviously. I don't want to make a gross generalization, but most of the men that I work with who are theater artists do not impose those kinds of problems.
The artists don't.
The artists don't.
Right.
However, we have to deal with many, many, many other kinds of people. And I will say that the thing that I struggle with the most is a pretty constant day-to-day encounter with men who come from a very different culture, who diminish me or what I say or what I do or what I think in subliminal but palpable ways on a daily basis. And it is something that you get used to, and it's not until somebody really pushes that envelope that you get your back up really in an ornery way about it, because for the most part, most women, I think, just learn to deal with it and live with it, and you move on and you get past it and you do what you got to do. But I think that if anything has eroded my energies and my passion and my artistic stamina over the years, it's when that kind of daily, as I said, I use the word diminishment because it manifests itself in different ways, but it does feel diminishing, kind of gets to you after a while. And then so you find ways of dealing with it and getting past that. But there is still that for all of the progress we have made over the years, and we have made a ton, that is still very much a part of our culture, and it drives me out of my mind.
Yeah. Sometimes it comes in around money.
Yeah.
It used to be, I remember when I was in the 90s when I had a play of mine called Having Our Say on Broadway. And the Shubert organization, thank you. I was working in a Shubert theater and Jerry Schoenfeld was still alive and he liked to pat my tushy a lot. And he said, you know, I hope you don't mind, but I just feel, you know, very much like your uncle. And I thought, you do this to your niece? I mean, what? And he said, you know, I really success d'esteem, Emily, but what you need to do is learn how to make money. And you haven't yet learned how to make money. And, you know, I don't really trust women with big budgets, but if you wanted to come and work for me, I could teach you how to handle one. And I thought, motherfucker, you know? I run a $14 million operation. I know about how to make a large budget and how to make a budget work. But that's what the guys used to say. Now it's not said. It's just implied. Correct. Oh, of course, we don't want to bother you with the budget. We want you to feel like you can create what you want to create. I get this all the time. It's like, no, I want to be bothered by the budget. I always quote Oscar Wilde, who said, you know, amateurs talk about art, artists talk about money. And that's actually true. Artists are constantly dealing with money. If we don't constantly deal with money, we're broke and we can't create the things we want to create, right? So we're constantly thinking about it. So there are all of these weird things that female artists get, and I think also because when women are in a position of power, it's very important not to raise our voices because there's a sense that if how to explain
raise it? You're hysterical.
You're hysterical, right. Yeah, and aggressive and emotional.
Or right.
Yeah, and you're not going to be listened to properly. And so you learn this over the years, and I realized unconsciously that most of my staff is women because it's such a relief for me not to have to navigate that. So I've surrounded myself and quite, you know, and I've had discussions with the men at our theater. They're extraordinary people, and they've bought into the sort of female way of doing things at the theater. We do things by consensus. People don't boss each other around. It's very much discussing things in a way that's very careful with each other's feelings. And I think that the guys all feel this way. We've talked about it a lot, that the men feel they like being in that environment where they're not up against aggression too.
And picking up on that, the female environment thing, when there's a matriarchal culture in a theater company versus a patriarchal one, the thing that I also know is that that the level of communication is much better. I mean, men, this again, please forgive me for these.
God, I know.
They just don't talk as much. They don't talk as much. And so you're trying to partner with a guy on a particular thing, and you're like, talk to me, tell me, where are we with this? But women just tend to tell you what you need to know right away. And there's a difference. And so the men who have bought into this matriarchal culture at theaters run by women are men who like to communicate and are very good at it and are wonderful at it.
That's right.
And don't begrudge it and love it, and they feel just as empowered by it as the women do.
That's right.
And I think that that's a great thing, and I'm very lucky to have a lot of great guys. I have many, many women on my staff. I think I'd have to figure out what percentage ours are, but it's probably half and half at this point. But I really think that part of the reason that there is such communication, good communication, is because it is, I am a female and I lead the theater, and so I kind of insist upon it. But, you know.
Yeah, just natural way to be.
Yeah.
Audience, I know I'm letting you down because I haven't turned to you yet. I will turn to you soon, I promise. And I'm totally cutting out questions. I'm sorry, John, wherever you are. I'm cutting out the Me Too question because I feel like we've already sort of hit it a little bit. And I think we'll hit it on the backside of things with my last question. But I'd love to just ask you what is the most important lesson of leadership that you've learned as artistic directors? Ryan, you can go first because you have the most pained expression.
It's terrifying. It's a lesson I'm still learning. That's why it's a pained expression. At the end of the day, you know, as an artistic director, you're listening to your audience, you're listening to your board, you're listening to your managing director, you're listening to everybody, listening, which I value so much. But at the end of the day, I think the thing that I am still learning is to hold on to your gut, which when I was a freelance artist didn't feel as hard somehow. It's when you have more choice, with great power comes great responsibility. To balance listening with your heart and your gut, and to that's it. It's balance, and I think that's something that some leaders, and maybe our country and maybe the world, could do more of. But it's two-sided.
Next? No? Shall I move on? Any other lessons?
I guess I was just thinking about what I call, for want of a better word, the yoga of it all. Because I feel like theaters are inherently very dramatic places. And it's so easy for me to get sucked into the drama. And I think trying to find that space to lead from, where I can step back from the drama and sort of hold steady, and kind of breathe through the thing, because it feels like that's what stabilizes everybody else.
You know, I do half an hour of yoga with every acting company when I'm directing before we start rehearsal, for just that reason. And then, of course, I think I'll keep going and continue my daily practice without them, and, you know, often it doesn't happen. And if I could drop back in like that, just before every art staff meeting. I think things would go even better. That's so interesting that you put it that way. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
Can you just, what's the exact question again? What is the
Hardaway
It's
already,
a hard
Bonnie.
question.
You can answer any question you want.
No, I know,
but-
that's okay. But did you say what is the hardest lesson learned that you've learned, or what is the most?
The most important
The most
lesson
important.
you've learned as a leader.
I don't know. I think for me the thing that comes to mind is that running a theater is like working in an emergency room basically 24 hours a day, every day. And there is, I can count maybe on one hand the amount of days in my 28 years where I have not had a day filled with some kind of crisis. Yeah. I think the most important thing that I've learned to hang on to, and if that makes it an important lesson learned, is that you do have to keep yourself to some extent calm by saying, this too shall pass. And I may have to go through utter hell to get through it, but it too will be taken care of and go away if we all do the right thing. And so having faith in that to get you through the next hour or through the next day or through the next production or through the next set of board meetings or fundraisers or whatever, all of the millions of various things that we have to do, because it is an exhausting endeavor that is often fueled by passion and energy and all of those great things. But I think that there's so much that besets and besieges all of us on a daily basis in terms of the difficulty of sustaining a living entity like a theater in this day and age, is that you just have to keep saying, this crisis is going to go away. This too shall pass, and we will find a way to keep going on. And I think that mantra is probably one of the things that I've had to learn to discover on my own over the years, and that has kept me going.
I would say, I feel like I could synthesize what all three of you have said and add one more thing to it, and maybe it is really what you're talking about, getting through the crisis and trusting your gut, and the yoga of it all is just that old-fashioned thing of remembering mission. And when you feel like you're getting lost, just remember why we're all doing this, why we're all, in this together as a company, and remind everyone of that as we're hitting the hard patches, because there are just so many. And to know that each time, as the longer we do it, each time we have gotten through it.
That's right.
But it's remembering what we stand for each time.
So returning, and this is my final question, I promise everyone will turn it to you. Returning to the theme that I sort of grounded the conversation on of diversity, inclusion, and equity. We're in a historic sea change opportunity that's already begun as baby boomer artistic directors have announced retirement and are approaching retirement age. In 2018 alone, 25 artistic directors were appointed to major theater companies. Note that 3 of those positions were Time's Up hires for leaders whose sexual harassment and inappropriate histories of inappropriateness with their employees led to their dismissals. According to Teresa Eyring, who's the executive director of Theater Communications Group, which is our national organization, she was speaking specifically about the filling of the leadership vacuum, and she says, there absolutely is an opportunity to build a more inclusive and diverse leadership composition of the American theater field, and there is absolutely a responsibility to recruit with a special eye toward identifying talent among women, people of color, trans people, and others who have been underrepresented at the highest levels of the American theater. And as Michael also noted, if you've had an opportunity to read the New York Times article from last week, which highlights 6 new significant artistic directors, all leaders of color, including 4 women, And that article also cites a statistical study that shows that women have been named to 41% of the 85 artistic directors' positions filled since 2015, and people of color have been named to 26%. New Jersey, you can do this. New Jersey, you can do this. Could you speak to why addressing and achieving gender and racial parity and representation is necessary for the advancement of our art and our culture and society, and talk about what you're doing to achieve it? Go.
We need to be telling everyone's stories. And as a theater that does new work, I think it's our responsibility to tell stories that aren't necessarily our own, but ones we can learn from. I can say at Passage, it's important to us that not only are we representing our community on our stage, but behind the scenes as well. And not only do we want to represent them, but we want to do stories that resonate with them. And this is in diversity, not just race and gender, but socioeconomic class as well, I think is really important. And so, you know, we are making sure that the people we hire are teaching artists, are people of color that are going in and speaking to students that are also people of color. We want those students to know that you can do the theater, you can be in the theater, you can lead a theater. And so, you know, it's especially when I'm looking at new plays and I'm looking at the stories we tell and who's responsible for telling them. It's important to us. You know, Trenton, we're in Trenton. Trenton is 50% African American and 36% Latino, and it would be unbelievably irresponsible of me to not consider that in our artistic programming, so that our audience feels like they're part of our family, which they are.
And I have the same task, but in an opposite way. I feel a tremendous responsibility to make sure that everybody understands that the classics are not just for white people or rich people or highly educated people. That the reason that they are classics is because they speak to all of humanity and have transcended time and place and culture and everything. And so I feel very strong obligation to make sure that people of all identities, races, colors, genders, religions, everything, understand that these amazing pieces of work that have been handed down through the ages are for everybody, and that their ownership of that work is as valid as anybody else's. And that is actually a tough barrier to break through in a lot of places. And it's been very challenging and a great joy to watch those barriers get broken down. And there's lots of ways to do that, but they all take a lot of effort. And I'm happy to watch my audience getting more diverse. I'm happy to watch all the kids that we're working with get really, really more diverse. And part of the way that we've done that is that we do the classics with very diverse artists. And we've been doing that since I got there, you know, almost 3 decades ago. But even that has actually become easier, finding the artists to be able to do that, because you do see that pool of diverse artists growing, which is a great thing. Pushing the audience to get more diverse is a harder job for us. We're in a very different kind of community than you are, yeah. So it's same goals, different conundrums and different challenges, yeah.
I would say one reason why it matters is that theater is kind of a place that we go to build our world. And so in every aspect of that, if we're looking at all the things in our world that are broken, we kind of want everybody to be at the table as we start to try to have those conversations about how to do things differently. And I will say that in a really granular way, one of the things that I have observed playing out just with staffing shifts that have evolved at Luna over the past year, is watching, even in the course of this year, staff members feeling comfortable to speak out and to object to aspects of pieces that we have been considering for our season. Because it felt like there were things about those plays that supported even just prevalent cultural tropes that felt like they had seen too much of this particular experience for their own, like a representation of their own cultural background in a particular way. And I think that has been really valuable to have those voices and to start saying, okay, so not only let's make sure that we tell diverse stories, but let's make sure that the diverse stories that we are telling are actually chosen by members of the communities whose stories are being told.
I heard snaps back there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting having been around so long, because I've seen so many cycles of this. When 30 years ago, or 35, 40 years ago, I was always the first woman to direct on any main stage. I was the first woman to direct at the Guthrie Theater. I was the first woman to direct at Cincinnati, and I was the first to direct at Cleveland, and I could go all the way around. I was the first to direct at BAM. So, that our group, there were 4 women along with me who got artistic directorships in 1990. By the end of that first year, I was the only one left standing. I'm very concerned that this is not answering your question. I mean, my entire life has been dedicated to telling the stories of women and people in color, not my own story, and I want to see other people on stage. But at any rate, to talk about what my concern is right now and this huge political shift that no one's talking about, and I'm very concerned about it. And if I look at I look at Jane. I mean, I think there are people in this room who understand what I'm talking about. I am so concerned that we are setting up people to fail. That out of a sense of liberal guilt, search committees are taking very talented young women and people of color, giving them the leadership positions, and they have not set up their boards, their staffs, or their communities to support what is needed. And then they can say, see, they couldn't do it. I'm very concerned about it. If I hadn't had a fantastic managing director and a fantastic board president, there was a writer in this town who, after my first season, said, that woman should be driven out of town on a rail. There was, and what happened was the managing director at the time, Jeff Woodward, and Liz Philo, our wonderful board president, said, that is misogyny, that is wrong, she's doing a great job, how dare you? And they called in the editor of that newspaper and said, I'm sorry, that your writer should not be able to write that headline. And there was, and what was being put into the body of the article was gossip that he'd heard at a cocktail party in Princeton, and was also untrue. So he was censured. And then there was a retraction. And I got, every time there were movements to get rid of me, or to say this woman is doing too many plays by people of color, and and too many plays about women, I got support from the board, and I got support from the staff, and they went back out to the community and to the press. And at that time, I also, wonderful critic Alvin Klein, who has since passed away and was writing for the New York Times, believed in the work, and he supported me. But I am very concerned. I've seen it. Anne Bogart was one, Josie Abedy was another. They were demolished because they did not have the proper support. So I just am hoping that this rah thing is not superficial, and that the boards take their responsibilities extremely seriously.
There's actually a term for that now. I read it somewhere where it's called, like, it's not the glass ceiling anymore, it's the dangerous ledge or something like that. I can't, do you know what I'm talking about?
I do know what you're talking about. It's
they've termed it.
exactly
They've
what I'm
termed
talking
it
about.
because
Yeah.
that's a fear. It's a legit fear that people are starting to, thank goodness, talk about.
It is a totally legit fear. And in part of the problem is that in trying to be progressive and to move things forward, that some of these wonderful young artists, who are wonderful young artists, but they're not necessarily ready to be the leader of an institution yet, unless they have that kind of great support that you're talking about. Because they're not tried and true veterans. A lot of them are very young. And this is a job for, I mean, it's a really tough job.
It's a really tough job. And some of them have been associates, thank
Yes.
God, or have been
And
in
that's
these
great.
institutions.
But sometimes they're getting the jobs just because of who they are, and so they're being kind of thrust into a dangerous situation before they're quite ready. And one does fear for them, because the last thing that should happen is that those young
And what I
people's
noticed in
careers
our
get
American
ruined.
Theater magazine was they're all talking to each other, but they need to get on to the phone to us,
to the old guys.
to the old guys
Yeah.
who have been through it and want them to succeed, so that they look to the to the older generation. And I hope
should
we've
throw
got to
them a
get that.
party.
We should throw them a party. You're right.
Yeah.
But boy,
Get them in a green room. Everyone in the audience, raise your hand for one moment. Just for one moment. Your right hand, sorry, if you would. I vow that I'm going to stay and eat all the food over there so that John won't forsake Paula. Okay, to your questions, please. Yes, and if you have a question, you rise and go to the microphone. I think we're all set for that. Thank you.
Okay. Well, first of all, it was absolutely wonderful, inspiring. I just wonder, and without losing your integrity, is there a time, especially dealing with men in theater, where you felt that the end justified the means? And I thought of an anecdote. Oh, God, I'm way older than anyone here, but probably in the late 1960s, I was a teacher, and I wanted to start the Gay-Straight Alliance. And so I went to the principal to start it. And he said some inappropriate things, but he allowed me to have the Gay-Straight Alliance because I was so very feminine and so very whatever. And I did it. I gave in because the end was getting the strongest Gay-Straight Alliance that this state had seen. I mean, it proved to be. So I just wonder, did I lose integrity? Have you ever come up to something like that and you just say, hey, you know, I'm gonna let him say what he wants or wink or do whatever, but I'm gonna get what I want for the good of the school, for the good of the cause.
Thank you. I'm just going to say this. I have a line that cannot be crossed. So I will put up with a lot. I'm perfectly happy to put up with a lot if it's going to get my company what it needs, or my artists what they need, or for the greater good. But there is a line. And I have been threatened and told to do what I do, and the line was, do what I tell you, little lady, or else. And was also actually physically hit when that was being said to me. Yep. And I said, I really shouldn't quote it completely, but I did say, if you touch me one more time, I will have you in jail quicker than you can blink. And I meant it. And I said, and you just met the first person who doesn't give a SHIT about your money.
Oh, go.
So now, I would hardly ever say that unless really punched and threatened, which I was being punched and threatened. So, but you know, so I do have it's a big threshold. It's a long away threshold. I will do most anything that I don't feel, but certainly that did involve my integrity, and that did involve what was right and wrong, and I wasn't going to let that guy get away with it. and I didn't. And it was a long, hard battle to remove that person from my universe that I was trying to keep sane and fabulous. But it happened, and I had help, and it was probably one of the worst situations. But yeah, short of that, I will do things that, yeah, I have to bite my tongue a lot. But if that's the worst of it, to get a bunch of really great things for a bunch of really great people, I'm going to do that.
Yes.
Oh, so many stories are going through my
Yeah,
head.
I know.
Could you come to the microphone? I would love your question.
Can we bring the microphone to her? It's a long walk. Oh, no, okay.
Such a short wire. If you would. Thank you. Don't be shy. Thank you so much. And anyone else, stand by.
Stand by question.
Hi. I just wanted to say I enjoyed listening to all of you. It was a very great presentation. I'm interested in the diversity issue, okay? Because a lot of times I go to the theater and I look around and, well, I can't say it's me and maybe one or two others. And so we talk about diversity in the actors, etc. And if there isn't a lot in the audience, then there's a support gap there, I think. All right? So my question is, has any one of you experimented with reducing prices for, minority groups?
Yes.
Theater is looked at as discretionary income, and prices have been rising quite a bit. So that in order to attract a diverse audience, can an underwriter, one of these sponsors, sometimes have one performance with a reduced cost and some targeted outreach to maybe young mothers who might not have had the opportunity? It's just a thought that occurred to me that this might be.
Can I answer that? We
Yes,
came
of
up with a
course.
really good plan. And it's not just for minority audiences, but audiences of that are having tough economic
Yes.
situations. Anybody who has trouble going to the theater because of financial circumstances.
Yeah.
We just set aside 8 tickets every single night, and you can pay what you want.
Okay.
You can pay $1. You can pay a nickel.
I never
I
heard
insist
of it.
I insist that you pay something, because the work has value.
Okay.
And so people do need to pay something, but it's within their means. And I think the typical people usually pay $5, anywhere from $5 to $10, and that's fine with us. And we make sure that there are 8 seats for every single performance now. And it took us a while to figure that out, believe it or not, because it's so against the theater person's instinct, what do you mean you want me to give them away for free? Well,
Yeah.
we're not giving them away for free. And we realized that there were certainly an average of 8 seats that we could make available every night without it impacting anything.
But how is it advertised?
We try to advertise it as much as we can.
Really?
And
Okay.
I will say that over the years, people are finding out about it and taking advantage of it more and more. Are they taking advantage of it as much as I'd like? No, not yet.
But great work. I visited at least 3 of the 4 theaters.
thank you.
And just wanted to say great work, and I'm looking forward to more.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for your generosity and sharing. I have a mid-career question. I am the founder of Parent Artists Advocacy League for the Performing Arts. Thanks. We know Simpatico very well. They're doing extraordinary things. Thank you. Our goal is to elevate the national standard of care and access for parent artists and individuals who have caregiver responsibilities, such as elder care. What are your recommendations, or what do you hope to see? Because I don't have a term for it yet. We'll call it the sandwich effect, where we're investing in early career artists, and then we're trying to implement artistic directorship. But then there are these points of access, the leaks in the mid-career level of the pipeline, such as caregiving responsibilities. What do you hope to see in terms of other leadership making intentional decisions to create points of access for mid-career artists and people on a promotional trajectory, so that when we get to the artistic directorship decisions, we have a plethora of options and people who have received experience from midway to intentional action. That's my question. What do you want to see?
So there's this, I was at an event last night. There's this amazing group that has been started by a woman named Jill Harrison, I think you know her,
Yes.
called the Directors Gathering, that is trying to do literally that, which is trying to fill in the gaps between early to mid to late career directors. And she I met her at the Lincoln Center Directors Lab, and that has been like her mission since I met her. She's an amazing woman. But also, so I've talked to her a lot about what those opportunities could be. I think that and I've been in a lot of conversations about this. Part of the problem is that very often internships at theaters aren't paid. And when you offer an unpaid internship, only people with privilege can take them. Right? So where does that get us? That gets us a lot of really privileged people with a lot of knowledge, right? So I think the idea is to invest more in these fellowships, invest more in these internships, grant organizations, individual donors. You know, we're so happy to be getting money for our programming, but we also need money for our future. And I think that really making sure that our interns and our fellows and the people we're training are not just coming from the most privileged, but also the people that have the mind and the creativity to expand it. So that's my answer, is to start paying our interns.
We're in the middle of this as well, yeah. And I just wanted to also say to the woman who spoke before you that we have a Pay What You Can. The first performance of every one of our shows is Pay What You Can. And we also have, maybe still too much money, but we always have $25 tickets. That's too much, I know, for a lot of people. But we do have that, and we do have Pay What You Can. And what I'm hoping we will start to see is also the program that Bonnie's talking about, that we will get it. Instead of the $25 tickets, those tickets that are been designated will become Pay What You Can tickets. So that's the plan. Thanks for asking. But what is...
A lot of theaters have it, and we just don't, we're not able to get the word out.
We're not able to get the word out, and any thoughts you have on how to get that word out is really important. Although I have to say, we also, on our production of Crowns, we realized that we were not getting the crowds we thought we would get, and realized that the price point was too high, and we brought it way down. So we brought it down to $20 tickets, and we started to sell out. Yeah.
Also, so we partner with nonprofit groups that we partner with in order to get the word out to the community. We say, well, if they're not coming to us, they're coming to somebody. So we find the nonprofit groups that are aiding our community and offer deeply discounted tickets to those nonprofit groups that can get the word out for us.
We'd also would love to have some ambassadors. So if you would like to be an ambassador, we would.
Ambassadors are
Yeah, we've
We'll
found
talk.
that
Okay.
artists are also really wonderful ambassadors in that regard. And our policy is, we are trying to build what we're calling a community access pass that we hope to implement in the coming year. But what we've done in the past year was actually to invite people from the community to see the play for free, and then just to let them know that they could invite their friends. Yeah. And so it became a very kind of casual thing. And on the one hand, I struggle with the fact that it required people to sort of have a friend who let them in. But I also liked the fact that it kind of didn't have any rules. And so then hopefully we become the space where if you just want to come, you can come. And there are definitely sort of challenges to implementation that we're struggling with, but there's something about that idea that how do you truly make theater accessible to everyone, and how do you not sort of create the hurdles of making people have to ask? Those are things that I'm struggling with right now.
I just want to know what you're talking about, a very particular point in life where what is happening? Where the opportunities are drying up, the ability to do the work becomes too
So-
challenging? Tell me, I'm not quite understanding.
Yes, so mid-career where the opportunities do seem to narrow, the work-life balance responsibilities increase, and the path decision stakes are also higher. So it's where, so there was a statistic in the New York Times that said by the ages of 40 to 44, 86% of women become mothers. It's this wild statistic. And then we talk about the motherhood penalty socioeconomically and how
I
that has
see.
intersectional
Yes,
implications.
yes.
So then we also talk about these structures not being built for individuals with work-life responsibilities. But it's also the reality that with the gender pay gap and all of these things that are interconnected with that reality, women are making decisions in the middle of their career when they had these ideas of potential artistic directorship to say, I simply do not have the resources to invest and double down in this middle of my career when it's needed to hustle harder to get over that leap when everything else is increasing its demand, including work-life balance, including parenthood, including caregiving.
I
as an
would
example.
recommend women at exactly that point to take over a theater. Run the show and make your own schedule.
I love it. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Hi. First off, I'm slightly scared to talk to four such powerful women in New Jersey theater. Thank you. And it's great to see a panel with four very talented artistic directors, all women. But I'm thinking that, to my knowledge, in New Jersey, there's only one woman who is a managing director of a theater company, and that's Kelly Ryman at George Street Playhouse. So my question is, are there still leadership positions in the theater that women are either actively discouraged from pursuing or, which is worse, that they're not even considered for, but just out of hand?
I have to say that Luna has a female managing director as well. And to kind of tie it back to your question about parenthood and access, that she and I both have kids, and that part of how that institution works is an understanding that we are both women and parents and artistic leaders, and that then you start to have each other's backs in a different way. Not to say that it's not a challenge.
I just wanted to say that I'm really happy that you're concerned, and that is more, I think, a New Jersey problem, because nationally the data that's out is it's just about 50-50 in terms of managing directors, male and female, nationally. So maybe New Jersey has to look at their situation.
I do think, as far as technicians and designers, we have some work to do as far as the technical fields, master electricians, carpenters. I have friends in both, and it's still a struggle. Set designers, set, sound, and lighting specifically, we could definitely use, I think.
And create training opportunities.
And create, training opportunities for that.
Yeah. So do we. Yeah, our
With
new
Bonnie.
production manager is a woman. Our master carpenter is a woman. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to tell you, to me, theater is inspiration, motivation, and transformation. You know, and just a sidebar before I get to my theater comment, I'm compiling a list unrelated to theater of mentors and those that have been inspiration to me or have meant things. And I realized going down the list, so far they're all men. And another realization, Emily Mann, that's two N's, right? Because McCarter's been so much to me. And it's made me thinking there are women that I haven't even thought of, you know. But as far as the theater, one of the prides in my life is 10 years, but community theater. It wasn't professional, you know. But I love the acting. But I directed once The Actor's Nightmare Christopher Durang, with the Montclair Dramatic Club, not realizing he grew up in Montclair, but the Montclair Dramatic Club moved to Bloomfield, you know, but it was so great. And like, directing was a whole different dimension, you know, and I forgot how much I loved that. And that was like the highlight of my theater life, and went in another direction, you know. If I do it over again, I'd go with theater, you know. But it was just great, you know, and artists who make a living at it are my inspiration, because it's so hard to make, whether it's a writer, a sculptor, anything, you have to teach or do something else, you know, and so those that are living the life, they're my inspiration. So keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies. This is a great conversation. And I can't wait to talk to you after.
Great.
But I do want to think, I love this question about the diversity, equity, inclusion question, and because I think there is an assumption around that people of color can afford the theater. That's an assumption that we make. And I'm wondering if there are other barriers that you have discovered in your theater work that is about diversifying your audiences.
We recently had a focus group. We're in the process of a new strategic plan, and we had a focus group with some individuals who, you know, buildings themselves are intimidating, right? It's not just the fact that it's a theater, it's the fact that it's a building that they've never been in. And for some people who've never been invited in that building, that the building itself can be a barrier. And that was a huge learning curve for us. We live in the Mill Hill Playhouse is a historic building in a historic neighborhood. And for people that have never been in it, they think that's where they can't go. So that was a learning curve for us. We didn't realize the physical structure itself. And we can always provide more opportunities, you know. So with that, we're providing more lighting to our theater entrance and other things to highlight the handicap ramp that we have, other things that make our space seem more welcoming and more accessible just physically.
I have the peculiar dilemma that the very point of my theater is the barrier. A lot of people hear the word Shakespeare. Now, we do a lot more than Shakespeare, but they hear the word Shakespeare and they run. They flee, they hide, they cower. They just go anywhere they can, not near us. Because there is such a misconception or preconceptions or misinformation or childhood traumas. I mean, there's so many things that you will get told by people who say, I don't want to come to your theater. You do Shakespeare. And that is probably the biggest barrier that we have, more than trying to get a more diverse audience, all those kinds. It's getting the whole 70% of the world that's afraid of Shakespeare to come to our theater, to see Shakespeare done in a way that will make them love Shakespeare, A, and B, that will get them to understand that we do a lot of other authors besides Shakespeare. And even new authors, young living authors, not dead ones, who riff off of other classic authors, including Shakespeare, who create very exciting contemporary work that speaks very much to what's happening in the world today. So I think for us, that's a very peculiar, weird barrier that we constantly struggle with on a daily basis. Really weird. Kind of like the building one, only a little different.
Yeah, we're in the building. I don't know.
Oh, it is. It's it's kind of the same. It's intimidating.
Yeah,
right?
it is. It's an old stone building.
Exactly.
I get it. I'm intimidated by it.
I think we work on it constantly. I mean, and a lot of it has to do with showing up, of just going to different people's communities, and whether it's the churches or whether it's the community groups or whether, we're just constantly going to the people and not just asking the people to come to us. Right. And that takes a lot of time, takes a lot of energy, and it takes people hours to do it. But it's an ongoing mission, and we take it very seriously. And some years we're more successful than other years. And sometimes the plays we put on are more inspiring than other years for different communities. But
we believe in doing it, and we need all the help we can get, from both the communities and from our own staffs to do it. So we're always open to getting more ideas, better ideas, but it's a core mission that we want to do it.
And I would also say we're intent also on being available to partner with organizations for things beyond what our theater's doing, and creating relationships that are mutually beneficial, and finding ways to do that.
It's the relationship building that is the key, I think.
Julie Denny, you're our second to the last question, and then this woman over here.
I may kill it. I've been thinking about this for a while. I want to thank you all. I know some of you, not all of you. I love the work you do. I will come to your theaters, which I haven't done. And I want to thank you, as do all of us, for your insight and your own personal struggles to get where you are. One of the things that interests me is language and our choices of how we describe what we do. And I observed in your answering some questions that Paula posed that you frequently said, well, I was really lucky. And I think that's a danger that we as women run into. You weren't lucky. You knew you were a little confused about some of the options that were available to you, so you were smart enough to go to somebody and say, I don't exactly know what to do. Or you were smart enough to apply for an internship so you could learn more about what you thought you were interested in. Or. You weren't lucky. You went after stuff. And that's why you're here today, and I want to pay that tribute to you and also ask you, please don't say, well, I was just lucky.
I have to answer you, Julie. I thank you, and I thank you for that. Yes, we've all worked so hard, but you can never underestimate luck. I know a lot of brilliant women, some I think much more talented than I, who did not have some of the opportunities come up that I did. And yes, I grabbed them when they came up, but they came up. And I will never underestimate the luck of that. Good fortune, perhaps, is even a better way of saying it. But thank you. Thank you.
All right, first of all, I'm terrified to be up here because I'm a writer. Writers work alone. And the theaters where we send our work to you, or we hope to, and there's, I guess my question is, how do we reach you? I know that there are a circle of elite playwrights, and people go to them all the time, and they're, approached with commissions and this and that. And yes, there are open submission windows, but we know, you're getting 250 scripts. Which ones are you looking at? Are you looking at the ones you already know, the names you already know? Are you looking at Spanish names? Are you looking at the names that are obviously different? No. Or are you going always for sort of like the people you know? That's what I guess that's my question.
Well, the answer is we do not just go for the people we know. We're constantly looking for the new plays and the new writers and writers we don't know and have not heard from.
And how do you do that? How do you solicit those scripts?
Well, in our theater, we no longer have an open submission policy because we were unable to keep up with all of the plays that came to us. So it's an agent submission, or it's a submission by people that we know in the profession whom we greatly admire, saying, you know, this is my student, or someone told me about this, or I went to a reading, we'll do it that way. Our staff is constantly looking at where people are doing readings of plays, and when we can, if we're interested in the subject matter or perhaps the writer, we will go and hear it. We're constantly on the lookout for the new, from people we have not heard from who have something important to say or a story that resonates with us. So people often will get their friends together, but the first reading I ever had was in my own living room with friends reading me a play. And then from there I went into a classroom at NYU and invited a whole bunch of people. And then, you know, as it's hard when you're a writer, because yes, it is a solitary thing, but if you're really solitary, you need to be writing poetry or fiction or
no,
something
I
else.
know that. That's
if
the
you
dilemma.
want to be writing plays,
we need to,
you have to be in the room with other people.
Right,
Yeah.
we need to get into the room with other people.
And you
It's
have to be
true.
proactive.
Right, and
Yeah.
I'm the queen of staged readings. I've had
Oh,
a million
okay.
staged
All right.
readings. I need to get to the next
Are
step.
you familiar with the National New Play Network? And
I
the New Play
am.
Exchange?
I'm on it. Yeah.
Yeah,
And in
good.
fact, I have a reading tomorrow at the Marcellus Theater in
Awesome.
Jersey City.
Amazing.
Yeah, but you guys aren't going to go.
Well, I will say that I have been combing the New Play Exchange because I'm in the midst of picking a season. And there's nothing that is more exciting than falling in love with a play by somebody that you have no idea who they are, and it just takes you into another world. So,
Do you have any special interest in New Jersey playwrights?
You know who you need to talk to is that man standing right over there, John
Yes,
McEwen.
I know.
They do the New Jersey Theatre Exchange every year, Stage Exchange every year, which
Right.
is all about supporting new work that deals with New Jersey. So he's the guy to talk to. But I will say that the National New Play Network and the New Play Exchange has changed the game.
Yeah, no, I've been on
And I will say the other resource is the New Jersey rep for the Dramatists Guild, who is Stephen Kaplan. So there are people out there.
We're looking. We promise.
Yes.
Thank
Keep
you.
writing. Keep writing.
Keep writing. We need
Thank
to.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Thank you for staying over. Please eat the food. Thank you for being here and for your questions and for your support of this event. Thank you very much.